Hey everybody, it's Angela
Hey,
Humphries with North Carolina School Choice. There we go. And I've got some guests for you today, some fun guests, Marcus Brandon and Rebecca Goode. Everybody say hi. And Marcus, if you want to start out introducing yourself, and then we'll move on to Rebecca. Tell everybody who you are.
hey there. Thanks, Angela, for doing this. I'm Marcus Brandon, and I am Executive Director of Carolina CAN. That stands for Campaign Achievement Now. I've been working there for a better part of 5 years. Our main goal is to make sure that all kids across the state of North Carolina have access to a sound, equitable, high quality education, regardless of zip code. And we support all types of initiatives that give parents the freedom and educators the freedom to do the best that they can for the best positive educational outcome. So we're really proud to be here and excited about the new conversation that unfortunately this virus has caused us to have. But with challenges, there are many opportunities. So I'm excited.
All right. Thank you for letting us know. And it looks like we lost Rebecca. That's okay. She's going to join us back. And I could say a little bit about Rebecca. I think she has a master's in education, and she is a candidate for a PhD. So if she can join back on, it looks like she's trying to join us back. She could pick up where I left off. Let's see. Hey, Rebecca. Go ahead and introduce yourself before you get cut off.
Okay. Well, I'm Rebecca Goode. I have worked in education pretty much all of my career. I was an English as a second language teacher and also a Spanish teacher for about 7 years. And then I started a private tutoring company, which focused on language minority students. And we had an after-school program and after-school tutoring. And now I am a homeschool administrator, and I'm pursuing my PhD in instructional design and technology. And I'm just happy to be here to share my experiences, not only with my own children, but also in just different best practices for all students to achieve the best academic success. So thank you for having me today, Angela.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And I hope the viewers can really digest what we're gonna talk about today. So when I talked to Marcus like a little bit ago last week, when we were kind of talking out loud about how we want to address this situation, this COVID-19. We're in unprecedented times, and unmuddying the waters and clarifying them for folks, like the myths that go along with homeschooling and the barriers that hold people back. We just want to dig into those a little bit today, right? And I think you were in agreement with that too, Rebecca, when I talked to you last week or a week before. So I think you guys both bring something. Oh, she's gone again. You both bring something unique to the conversation, So, I find value in both of your voices. So let's go over some homeschooling goodies. What do you think, Marcus?
I love it. Let's do it.
So what do you think? Are homeschoolers weirdos? How do we clarify that for it goes to Rebecca too? So you could go ahead and answer. You know me. You've known me a little bit now, Marcus. I'm a homeschool mom. You just met Rebecca. She's a homeschool mom. Do we come across as weirdos to you?
I think, like I told you before, even with me being in the work, it took me to really understand and get educated about homeschooling to remove those out of my own head. Whenever you thought about homeschooling, I thought, some very primitive age folks, and I never even really thought it was like racist. I just thought it was really like people who just really wanted to not be associated with a society, and they wanted to remove their kids from public and all of those things. And then when I saw these wonderful exercises of education through co-ops and through and people at home, and it wasn't that. It was professionals, and it was mothers that wanted to take education in their own hands. So I thought that when we were talking, that this would be an excellent opportunity for us to be able to get folks to understand what homeschooling is, because and what those things how important it is for us to address that it's okay and it's very normal for people to educate their kids at home. And with these newfound tools that we have, it is also okay and very normal for us to be able to utilize those tools, even if you're not homeschooling, to be able to enhance your educational experience with it, whether you're in a private school charter or a public school, how you can utilize these tools. So I think the conversation is very important.
Yeah, I think there's welcome back, Rebecca. She's gonna keep us on our toes today, really pushing the boundaries of my second live broadcast with StreamYard. So thank you for keeping me on my toes.
Okay, well, I will keep coming back. So
awesome.
I'm not gonna give up.
So yeah, I think people, so let me just back up for a second. So I think people have this visual perception of what they think homeschoolers look like. And I just want to point out, I'm wearing these bright earrings that were made by a homeschooler. I'm wearing this this bracelet that was, let me see, you put it in the camera view. There's a bunch of little thingies on there made by a homeschooler, you know. So I think a lot of people think right now that a homeschool needs to look exactly like their former school, and that's not the case, you know. So Marcus, your homeschool might look different than Rebecca's. Rebecca's might look very different from mine. You know, she was talking about kind of interest-focused education, and I think you call it something else, Rebecca. So what do you think? Are homeschoolers weirdos? And that's what Marcus was just answering when your clip cut out. So.
Okay. Yeah, I got to hear a little bit of Marcus, but if you mean parents who want to be involved and take the lead in their kids' education, if you mean that is a weirdo, then I guess yes, we are weird.
Oh man, to cut out again. I don't know what kind of internet she has. That's
unfortunate, but she but she was alluding to parents who want to take the lead, and so I remember, and this is why choice is so important. Your work and my work is because of the fact that, you know, everything is not for everybody. But as she will explain, that these are parents that are taking the leadership roles in their education. Continue, Rebecca.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Oh, well, and one piece I was going to say is, you know, coming from, you know, public school background, working with language minority students, the biggest piece that I found in their academic success was parental involvement. It really wasn't even about pedagogy. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about location or any of that. It was parent involvement. And again, once I had my own kids and now being a homeschool mom, I just realized how big that piece is. And, you know, again, coming from a public school background, I do see places where I was advocating for students, but in some ways I may have been stepping on that role of the parents. And so the research that I did with those language minority students really opened my eyes just to that piece of the parent involvement. And the impact that has on academic achievement for all students.
Gotcha. Yeah, you bring up some good points. So I think everybody's probably already heard that, you know, one homeschool doesn't have to look like the next, you know, homeschoolers.
And it shouldn't, absolutely.
Yeah, it shouldn't, because we're thinking of children as not one size fits all. So why would every school be a one size fits all school? And then I think I saw a tweet yesterday. I don't know if you saw it too, Marcus, because you're on Twitter a little bit, where somebody said, why aren't we individualizing the kids' education for the upcoming 12 years while they're in the education system, which is kind of a good point, you know. But
I think it's important because one of the when I used to be a former legislator. One of the first bills that I introduced was the personalized education plan. I wanted all kids to have an IEP and not just kids that had a 504 or had some type of disability. That I thought it would serve everybody. That bill passed the House, and we actually ended up adopting that bill and putting it into our homeschool. I don't think it's utilized enough, but there is a mechanism where educators can personalize education. One of the things I wanted to ask Rebecca, for people that might be interested in is that, like, one of the myths is the role of the parent. And so I know that I'm on the board of a charter school. I have a lot of parents that are contacting me. If you look on Facebook or Twitter, you see that the parents. It's been almost hilarious watching parents take on this new role, and sometimes there's fights. 4 times 6 is 24. How many times I'm going to tell you? And there's tension. And I wanted you to address like maybe the myth of the role of the parent that people find, because a lot of parents believe they have to be the teacher, they have to be the educator, and if I cannot do algebra 1 or algebra 2, how in the world am I going to homeschool? And so when she comes back, I think that would be an important thing, because that is the one question I hear the most. That is the one myth that I know that exists, is that parents believe they actually have to educate. But really, we know, Rebecca can allude to this when she gets back, that it really is more of a facilitator role. Making sure that your kids have the access and the opportunities that are afforded out there to make sure that their education is there. But yeah. I'll let Rebecca expand on that.
So Rebecca, I think you got most of the question, but before you answer, about facilitating home education and whatnot and the parent's role, I would first caution any parent considering going down the homeschool path to look at the regulations for their state. Like, keep up with the law. All three of us are not lawyers. We're not here to provide legal advice. We really need to caution people to check out, because you could be watching right now from the state of New York, and the three of us have connections with North Carolina and Virginia, so we don't necessarily know what the regulations are in all the 50 states, but we are all capable. We can look into that. It's not written in a foreign language. You know what I mean? You should be able to look up, in North Carolina, it's the North Carolina Department of Administration, and you can find homeschool regulations. And I actually posted it in the description, what defines a homeschool by North Carolina general statute. So just to clarify, homeschools can be religious and non-religious. And then there is a clause about directing your child's education in this state. So, okay. So we just lost her. So, but that's all right. She'll be back. I guess I shouldn't have said, okay, before you start.
We just got to let her start when she gets on.
Okay. You know where to sit. Go, Rebecca.
But I'm glad you brought up those pieces for folks that might be looking at this. But so here she comes. Well, let's see what she has to say. Poor Rebecca.
I hope it's not bugging the viewers too much, because we have a lot to say. I mean, we could continue talking. Okay, maybe that was not a successful.
But one of the things that I thought would be important for and why we wanted Rebecca on is that to be able to dispel those things that make parents have anxiety about doing this. There are many parents right now that have been thrust upon that's and not necessarily ever thought in the world. But that's what a lot of parents, I think, will find out, that this educational environment is very conducive for them. Like I told you earlier, that I was, in student council, I was peer helper, and I was a joint major in band, and definitely homeschool would have not worked for me. But I also recognized that there were many students that I went to school with, and many students that I see now that could have cared less whether they were in that building or not. That school was the actual regular school was actually a hindrance to their education more than it was helping it, and that it would have been better off. But then again, there are a lot of parents who don't understand or have missed about what that means, and so they don't go down that route. So I thought that this was a good way for us to begin that conversation for those parents, and again also for those parents who are in another school, a more traditional school, and how they can use the same technology and the same resources that homeschoolers have been using to enhance their children's education.
Yes. So I do have the statute here. So let me let me just go over the part about instruction. So General Statute 115C 563A, as amended, changes the definition of a homeschool to allow parents to hire tutors, let their children participate in group settings where they receive instruction. In parentheses, it says co-ops, 4-H, classroom instruction, etc. In parentheses, and be instructed by an expert that is not part of the household in the established homeschool. So in parentheses again, it says apprenticeships, a homeschool doctor teaching biology, etc. in parentheses. This will allow homeschool parents more freedom to choose what is best for the education of their children. End quote. So that is on the Department of Administration's website. Go, Rebecca, mark it, set, go. There. Go ahead, Rebecca. Can you hear us? Whoops.
Yes.
So go ahead and talk about the parents thing before you cut out. You might need to move to a better Wi-Fi location or internet location. Cutting out, but go ahead.
Oh, do you have a question for me?
Oh, sorry. It was a few minutes ago before you got knocked out, right? So Marcus was asking you about how the parents are directing the education and tools that they can use. And
I don't think she's going to make it.
Yeah, I'm thinking I could just call her on the phone and she could just participate through a phone call. So I'll do that in a second. But I think going over the myths and, anxiety is definitely one of the barriers. Another barrier to keep people out of homeschooling or that possibility, that freedom, is money. It costs money to buy school materials, school supplies. While supplies are probably a nominal part of the cost, textbooks are expensive, or getting a teacher on a DVD to teach your child. That's one tool that I use to teach my child math. So
can you explain what a co-op is for the audience? Because we have a legal definition in the statute of what a co-op is. And I think it's the one thing that made it unique for me. So I think if you could explain what a co-op is for the viewers, that would actually present a more of a picture that they can grasp.
Yeah.
Hello?
Hey, Rebecca. So I'm just going to keep you on the phone. And
okay.
I think that might work better. What do you think? So we'll see if Marcus can hear you all right. What do you think?
Yeah.
All right. So can you repeat your question, Marcus, for Rebecca, and we'll get her to engage since she keeps getting interrupted.
So one of the things that changed my mindset about what homeschooling was actually visiting a co-op. And so I would like for you, Rebecca, to literally paint a picture to a parent what a co-op is and how does that fit in, and you can expand on other ways that parents are able to facilitate education. And I hope everybody heard the statute, because it said nothing about teaching and it said nothing about being an educator. It was all about parents utilizing other resources to make sure their kids learn. So I would like for you to expand on what a co-op looks like, and maybe some other avenues that parents use to make sure that they are making sure that their children are receiving the highest quality education.
Okay, sure. And then I also did want to just quickly touch on, I didn't realize that you were involved in that personal educational, the PEP.
Right.
And I think that's great. And again, going back to the whole parent-led education, even with those PEPs, I kind of said, sometimes I sat in meetings, again, especially with language minority parents, where the administrators and the teachers kind of came up with a plan and the parent just sort of sat there and then signed off. And I really do feel that as a community, we need to empower all parents to be a part of that process, because it is a long range perspective where a lot of teachers are only with students for 9 months and then they're gone. And so when we have the parents involved, then we get that long-term perspective and the parents really know the kids. So I just want to applaud you on the PEP. I didn't realize that you were part of getting that underway. But as far as what is a co-op, and kind of like Angela was saying, how every homeschool environment is different, again, because every kid is different. And so co-ops, I've been in a co-op where all of the parents, we were all volunteers, and we had a leader who would kind of set us up and told us, okay, you're going to teach this class, or you're going to do this at this time. and we could volunteer to lead various classes. But again, this was all volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, I'm in a co-op where we pay a very reasonable tuition, and my kids go to their classes. It's 1 day a week, and they have science, they have social studies, foreign language, and then they also do, some other electives like sewing, photography. Again, it's just kind of up to what those parents want to teach, and so I do not have to teach any of those classes because I pay, and so I get to sit with my laptop and do other things while they're studying that day. And then my kids on another day, they go to what's called a forest school. And it's an outdoor education program here in Catawba, Virginia. And this particular program is really not academic focused. There's no really set curriculum, but my kids are learning foraging, orienteering, survival skills, so they're kind of outside sort of doing that sort of kind of like an unschooling sort of approach. So I'm doing a little bit of both. As far as that, and then my daughter is taking French, and so she has a small class that we set up, which right now we've moved to doing that online. So there's tons of options, again, with co-ops where you can pay tuition, and then they're more academically rigorous, but then there's others that are just kind of more enrichment, where everybody's sort of there on a volunteer basis. And again, some are more structured, some are like the forest school, where it's not quite as structured, but definitely some interesting skills that they're getting there. And again, I've seen, I have some friends who homeschool where they do everything, where the parents are doing everything, and I have others where they outsource pretty much everything. I had an instance where my daughter was struggling with her math, and I don't like teaching math, but I do teach Spanish. So I found another homeschool mom who was a former math teacher, and so we got together and I said, hey, how about I teach your kids Spanish and you teach my kids math? And we started kind of just doing that on our own, just kind of bartering there. So, again, it's like Marcus, I think you were saying some parents are overwhelmed because they think, oh, I have to teach everything on my own. But if you're on a budget, you can barter. You can look for, okay, what skills do I have, and get out there in the community. And then if you do have, some extra funding, you can pay for co-ops, or you can do, again, the volunteer co-op. So there's just so many options, again, even as far as the monetary issue, but also just what the academic and life skills, outcomes are going to be.
Does that answer your question, Marcus? I think
it does. And I also want to say that, Carolina Can and our partners have been advocating for, additional funding for parents to be able to utilize these things. And we do have education savings accounts that can qualify if your child is special need for some of these services that she was mentioning. Mm-hmm. It would be my goal that we see education savings accounts go universal, not just in special needs, but to be able to utilize a parent. What parents need to know, and the advocacy piece of this is that all of your kids, each child has a dollar amount that the state gives, and that's approximately $9,500 per child. So it would be my interest, and for your interest, that we utilize some of those funds if you decide that you don't want to attend that this route of homeschooling or e-learning has brought your attention, and you want to do that we would be able to make sure that that those particular funds, particularly if you are in categories like free and reduced lunch or special needs and those type of where we already have scholarships for that, but
sure,
to be able to do that. So that's a part of it's not there yet, but it's a part of the advocacy. And then
I would like to see that. I would like to see some of our legislators hit the fast forward button on education savings accounts in North Carolina. But we have a question. We could come back to the funding, because I think that's a big barrier. I think that even if a family had at least $500, that could be helpful for, you know, at least a year of homeschooling. Do you agree with that, Rebecca?
Absolutely.
Yeah, just that little bit. You can get by with that little bit.
Yeah, but I will say, and I certainly support that, you know, of letting homeschool families have some more flexibility with their tax dollars to support their own children. But there are a lot of studies out that are showing that it really doesn't even cost a ton to homeschool kids. I think the average that most homeschool families spend is around $600. But even the studies that look at academic achievement for homeschoolers, there's really not a big difference in, you know, the ones who are spending thousands of dollars and the ones who are spending, you know, a couple hundred. And so again, it really just comes back to that parent involvement piece, because that's really what it's about. But yeah, sure. Again, you know, certainly being able to have a little more, you know, say so over those tax dollars, you know, and again, of course, being the parent, you know, leading the education, I think is an awesome piece. And I definitely am going to follow Marcus and how that progresses.
Yeah, that's why I believe that should be an avenue of not scholarships, like, you know, like how we fund charter schools. It's not necessarily through a scholarship, but they get the total full funding charter school of the kid, and then with scholarships they get partial funding of that. But with ESAs, it would allow parents to use what they use per se. So if you only are using $600, you would only be reimbursed $600. And I've seen the same studies. For those people who think that it is going to be an astronomical amount for you to do that, there are ways that people do it for $600. There are ways that people are doing it for $200 or less.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't want, and next time we have this conversation, I hope we do it ongoing, we can talk about more specifically ways that folks can get involved, or ways that they can do this, you know, basically for nothing or very, very cheap. Because I think that would be, you know, money is always an issue. So we want to make sure that all barriers are addressed.
That's a biggie. All right, let's answer this question I've had up for a while from Ed Temple. So Ed Temple asks, how are your kids tested that are homeschooled? Are they able to earn scholarships from colleges? I think that would be a yes. They are able to earn scholarships from colleges. What you have an answer, Rebecca, about Virginia's testing for homeschoolers? In North Carolina, it's posted on the Department of Administration, so parents can go there, and there's a list of tests posted, and you are just required to take one state-approved test. So North Carolina is a very free state, but you could chime in about Virginia.
Yeah, sure. Virginia, and with Virginia, we go through our local LEA. So that's our, you know, our local school, wherever our kids would go to school, that's who we kind of have to go through. Okay. And we do have a religious exemption clause where you do not have to test. I personally don't use that. I just do it through the homeschool statute. And then with that, we have the freedom to choose which tests we want to give. And we have to get those results in by August 1st every year. And then we also have to submit what's called a notice of intent, where we outline the curriculum that we're going to be doing with our kids. I give my kids the old school California achievement test. I think when I was a kid, and it cost me $25. I get it through Academic Excellence, and I'm the administrator, and so I give that to them every year, and I get those results, and then I just have to send that in to our local LEA every year. As far as the scholarships, again, if you've got those, you know, the transcripts of what the student has been doing in their high school, those required classes, and then if you have the test scores. Again, my kids are not quite at that level yet of looking into scholarships, but I don't see why they would be prohibited from any scholarships, academic scholarships. Yeah,
I would say that the times have changed. Parents did used to be concerned about, okay, so if I have this homeschool graduate, is a college going to give them trouble, or are they going to accept them? And there have even been cases that I believe have gone to the Supreme Court where, you know, graduates from their homeschool high school have been denied access to a college. And like I said, it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the student won, I believe. I believe I just read about that in the Homeschool Legal Defense Association's magazine publication, because I don't know if you subscribe to that, Rebecca, but I like having that extra layer of protection for my homeschool. So I pay their membership fee, which I didn't do my first 2 years. This third year, being more politically active and homeschooling at the same time, I felt like I needed that extra layer of protection. And I think they do a good job of keeping us homeschoolers informed of legal matters in the community, where an LEA might say, oh, you don't have the right to homeschool, you know, and they do try to interfere from time to time. So are you a Homeschool Legal Defense member? And they don't pay me. I just like what they're doing for homeschool.
No, I'm not. Like I said, I do try to kind of keep up with, you know, with different groups in North Carolina and Virginia. And occasionally, like, different things will kind of pop up. But no, I think that's great that you're following that, because, yeah, we definitely need to make sure that our rights as parents are not infringed upon.
Yeah.
I just looked on at a study. The study showed that homeschoolers are attending college at about the same percentages as public school students, and they are receiving scholarships at about the same percentage. So so there are what the advice is that you would want to be able to, like you said, utilize the educational experience and try to differentiate your educational experience from others, because it's competitive, and but it doesn't. There's, at least the statistics doesn't show that there are any less going on of students attending college and students being able for scholarships. So I would imagine that parents would do the same thing they would do anyway. Make sure that you apply for everything, and make sure those essays are tight, and utilize those extracurricular activities. In some ways, homeschoolers would have a unique advantage in being able to craft those extracurricular activities to make sure that they are attractive to donors and scholarship givers. So,
yeah.
So, Rebecca, can you share a little bit about what you've read about, let's see, outcomes, homeschool outcomes? So, after high school, what did you said you picked up an article recently about what homeschoolers do once they're out of that homeschool setting. Do you have that in front of you?
I know the article you're referring to, and I can definitely send you a link. It was just a systemic review of homeschool research, and it's only been over the past 10 years, just because there wasn't a whole lot of activity going on before that. But just a couple interesting things that I found was that homeschoolers had higher levels of tolerance for various political and worldviews. Homeschoolers had higher levels of life skills and lifelong learning. So meaning that they, throughout their adulthood, that they were engaged in continual learning. And then I also found that homeschoolers had lower levels of behavioral issues, and they were, as far as behavioral issues, they were looking at underage drinking and truancy. And so those were some just interesting little finds, you know, again, outside of the academic achievement that I just noticed in that article. And I'd be happy to send that to you if you want to post that article.
Yeah, maybe you can post that. You could always post that in the comments later. And maybe it would maybe it would come up while, you know, if people catch this live video after the broadcast ends, and I think it might pop up on their screen. So, Marcus, what do you see for any changes in the near future with COVID affecting? So our General Assembly is coming back April 28th, unless there is some sort of special session, but I don't see that happening. So, can we apply any pressure to our legislators? Of course,
we can always apply pressure, and we're prepared to do that. One of the things that's very important, and this is also almost like a call to action, but also very important for legislators to understand. we have had a lot of missed instructional time this year.
Yes.
So that and there's been so we are going to have to catch up. There are people who were in Algebra 1 this year who will be in Algebra 2 next year. There are people who missed, you know, almost an entire 9 weeks of instruction. And then we have summer. And we already automatically know we have a summer lag behind. And so what does that look like now? And we also know that there are second graders that are going to go to third grade and have to pass reading proficiencies in third grade. And I can't imagine what that looks like. And so we, just as we are making a response in all areas of our life because of this virus, it is important for legislators and parents to understand that we also have to adapt to this situation, and it is a real reality. And so I don't want a bunch of third graders getting tested next year who failed the test, or a bunch of people who go to Algebra 2 and only know half of Algebra 1, and then they fail the test. We've lost time, and we've lost serious instructional time. And so what I am looking forward to is that we also have all of these new incredible tools that parents know about now, educators know about now, that we can utilize to be able to help bridge those gaps, particularly during the summer. So I would ask that those who are in the homeschooling world to reach out to your neighbors and your friends that are not, and invite them to the world of online learning and using co-ops and using a la carte method of education to make sure that struggling second grader doesn't go to third grade even more behind. You have the ability to do that. There are also parents out here who have never done homeschooling but have really absolutely caught on to what these new tools are can do, or would be interested in to facilitate something like that. It's going to take everybody. The same effort that we use to stay home to bring down the curve is the same effort that we're going to be able to need to get everybody caught back up. And so if you are an educator, if you are an involved parent, if you're a homeschooler, I think we need to make sure that we are making sure that all of our brothers and sisters that are going through the same thing, especially those who are vulnerable, that we utilize these resources and we create space for that. So but on the legislative end, I think that I got a report the other day through the CARE Act. We are receiving around $350 million specifically for education. It would be my wish that we use that and leverage that with the existing money that we have with education savings accounts to be able to provide these type of resources, the a la carte resources that you were talking about, to at least kids that are struggling and behind, maybe free and reduced lunch kids, maybe kids that have an IEP. It would be a legislative process to figure out who would qualify for those ESAs, but we definitely will have a population that would be more vulnerable, that was vulnerable to begin with, and now are even more vulnerable now. And so, that's where I think that we can have an amazing discussion. We can have a really productive discussion about how we move this forward, how we catch people up, and how we even move education, public education, to a new realm. As I've always been criticized for being a choice person, and I've always told people that it's all a mute conversation. One day we will have kids and parents that are choosing schools, choosing education how they want, where they want. It'll be a lot more online. And so you yelling at me about school choice is really mute, because the parents and the students are going to bust through it. So I think the virus has sped that up a little bit. And I think that the legislature and policymakers need to understand that, and understand it as an opportunity, not as a hindrance, but an opportunity to enhance our already stressed public education system to be able to build way more capacity. Because if we ever needed capacity, we need it now.
Yeah, even the virtual classrooms and such that the districts are doing, they haven't been able to, from what I am reading, they have not been able to support the amount of users trying to tap into that virtual educational system that they're just kind of inviting people into at the last minute. And from what I understand, I think Wake County is just now going virtual this week, week 4. Right. So I thought at first that they were going live last week, but I don't think they were 100% up and running.
Well, so, I mean, yeah, it's just been difficult for everybody. I mean, for being able to do that, and you can expect a massive school system would have lots of issues, and so so that's the reality that our legislators face, that us leaders in the North Carolina face, is that we have a lot of kids that missed a tremendous amount of instructional time.
Yeah,
fall still happens. Next year,
so I would so we all don't necessarily have to be homeschoolers in this situation, even though Rebecca and I are. You know, I've seen people tweet about, are we all homeschoolers now? Yeah, kind of, but we're all crisis homeschoolers. So I would caution people to, you know, if this is not working out for them, they don't have to go down this route in August. If what's going on right now, if they are trying to provide some instruction to fill those gaps that you're talking about, Marcus, you know, if they've got to get up to par for Algebra 2 next year, and maybe they're trying to study on their own at home right now during their potential summer break, right? And it's just not working out for them, that's okay. But if it is working out for them and mom doesn't know how to teach Algebra 2, it doesn't matter. We can we have Khan Academy. We've had Khan Academy at our fingertips for free for several years. So that is one free resource that everybody can use. I think they just crowdsource that. I'm not sure. But Rebecca was talking about people collaborating. So Marcus, if someone in your community wants to know about political engagement or civics, you could come in as a guest speaker one day and talk to a group of 10 children very easily. I could do the same thing in my community when I have free time. Rebecca can talk about what it takes to do bona fide research, you know, so it's a big community collaborating experience if that's what you want. If you are a lone wolf and you're enjoying this time in your home being locked down, I'm kind of enjoying it. I don't have to run around and do all these activities right now. So I'm okay with that. You would think my home would be spotless now with all this downtime. That's just not the case. We got to focus on school choice a little bit. We got to talk about the large counties in the state and how they're reacting to the Constitution and so on and so forth. But anyway, you know, money is not always a barrier. Creativity does help, I think, with homeschooling. Those free resources help. I mentioned a homeschool store in Raleigh, North Carolina last week that has free bins outside, and I hit those up all the time. You know, I see what's in there first before I walk into the store. And tapping into the homeschoolers, they might have materials for you, Marcus, or anybody in your community. Like, so if you said, hey, what do you recommend for 2nd grade math? You know, I wouldn't have a recommendation, but I could reach out to an elementary parent, homeschool parent, and they might have a recommendation for you. They might say, this is religious, this is not religious. What do you prefer? You know what I mean? Or this is exactly what you have in the school system. You can go buy it for $25, this workbook, you know? So I don't know if Rebecca has anything to add about tools and shopping around for different resources or finding those tools that we could apply. Oh, and I was going to say you can read to your child every night until they are proficient in reading. So I did that until Izzy was able to read too. That's something we can all do for 10 minutes every night. I think Rebecca may have implemented that in her home.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still enjoy reading together when we can. But I kind of just want to follow up on what Marcus was saying about our vulnerable students. And, you know, that kind of it kind of does go along with the homeschool issue because we're talking about customization. We're talking about learner-centered education. And I feel that in this time, you know, that really is, this conversation has been happening. The internet has been giving learners so much more power over their own learning, and our vulnerable students, above all, they need that. They need that customization. And so when the fall, does happen, I mean, we don't even have to wait for the fall. Like Marcus was saying, if you know, some students, again, I'm thinking of, my former students and their parents didn't even speak English. Some of the students, again, were still learning English. Those are people that, that we can reach out to. I mean, obviously right now, it's hard to get together, face to face, but even, maybe late summer, we can start, maybe nonprofits and, different organizations, churches can maybe put together some, study groups and, some different things to help those kids out, because you're right. I mean, there's kids who are even behind now, but again, through this experience, we can find ways to customize that education. And honestly, there's times when we really don't quite need as much instructional time, because when you get that one-on-one, that can be where, when you find that student's motivation, where you tap into that curiosity, that's where the magic, really happens. And so when you get that one-on-one time, when you build that relationship with that student, and you have, an advocate, hopefully a parent, but if not a parent, then an advocate who cares, when they can tap into that, that's when the academic achievement will take off, because you've tapped into that motivation and that curiosity. And a lot of that does come through one-on-one. And so that's what I'm hopeful, is that this time will lead to, if we need to have, one-on-one tutoring, or we need to get, some more after-school programs going in the fall for those vulnerable students. I'm hopeful that parents and students will advocate for themselves for a more learner-centered approach, because that's definitely where we're going.
I think you're exactly right. I think that's exactly kind of what I've been trying to convey, is that for a lot of folks, whether you want to do this full-time or whether you want to do it part-time, customization and using the e-learning tools and some of the schools that homeschoolers have been using for decades is probably the better way to go. What's really funny is a lot of my parents that tell me that the teacher posted the work, and it took my kids an hour and 15 minutes to finish all of it. And so their thought process is that this takes 6 or 7, 8 hours, like a regular school day, to get things done. When you're doing one-on-one learning, it doesn't take nearly those hours. And
yes, sir.
And so you can spend some time dealing with what you have to deal with, which we all know, their subject matters. Like for me, science and math, it's just something I would have had to get done because I had to get it done, not because I loved it. But then there are areas where you can really spend time making sure you build self-esteem and positive self-image by focusing on those things that kid is passionate about, and spending more time in those areas and building those skills through those areas where they are dictating the learning, and they're more passionate about it, and you will see the outcomes. But a lot of times in a structured environment, you don't really students don't have the opportunity to shine individually. It's basically off of the curriculum that's going on. And so where a kid might be very, very excited about robotics and might do very well, and it might strew a whole string of things of learning, you as a now empowered educator now can focus on that. We can make sure he gets his math and history, but I'll bet you anything, you focusing and giving them more time to deal with robotics will bring out more educational outcomes than spending, a lot of time just, trying to figure out, algorithms or formulas. I'm biased. I'm not for math.
Yeah, I'm not a math person either, but my friend Ed Temple, I don't know if he's still watching. I think he's a math instructor, and some of these teachers that are out there, if you stumble across a teacher, they might be willing to do some tutoring free of charge because they are invested in their communities, and And sometimes they're like, it is my pleasure to like, so I went through this with my daughter. I was like, I hate teaching math. I'm going to buy the DVDs and there's going to be a teacher on the screen. But, you know, it goes back to that resource, that store, Homeschool Gathering Place in Raleigh, North Carolina. You don't have to be, there is no homeschool card. Okay. You don't need a card to get into the store. It's open to everybody. Half the store is consignment items and then half is brand new stuff. And like I said, you might find some of that in the school system too. Like I know Horizon, I had seen when Izzy was in kindergarten in the public school system. So that's a brand that has lots of colored pictures and things like that, depending on what kind of learner you have. If you have a kid that wants to sit in front of those virtual you know, videos like Khan Academy offers, I think my daughter really likes the guy drawing on that screen. And there might be some politics interjected with these various tools too. So, you know, people have to be cautious about what they are putting in front of their children. But
I wanted to, like, I know we've got like 6 minutes left, but if there was anything Rebecca has that, like, Rebecca, I wanted Rebecca to, like, if there was really easy, I know that you mentioned one, and I don't know if you could capture this on where people can see it, the open source they could get that so somebody can go around and look. But Rebecca, are there websites or resources that someone online, I think we will probably do another follow-up discussion that's more specific, but like right now that, like, someone who's interested in this, maybe a volunteer who says, you know what, I used to teach math. How can I can do this? Or just, or I'm a parent and I want to, what are some of the easy websites that can get people started looking and exploring homeschooling or being able to do virtual learning education, you know, like in crisis mode?
Honestly, Facebook has been a really big help to me because I've done homeschooling in North Carolina and now Virginia. And once I kind of tapped into a couple of the local Facebook groups, that was really where I found it was just a lot of word of mouth as far as co-ops and just different field trip opportunities and, you know, what's going on at the local library. So that's, I mean, honestly, Facebook and social media has really been a big help to me because I'm trying to, I mean, because every state, like Angela, like you were saying, every state is so different and every community is kind of different. So that's why I really feel like Facebook and social media might actually be a good fit to, you know, again, once you can kind of tap into that community, and sometimes you can get on email lists of different, you know, classes. I mean, it's, you know, there's just so many options out there for people.
They literally just type in homeschool and homeschool Greensboro and things would come up in Facebook like that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think how I would think so. You know, that you could, yeah, just do like a Google search, and then once you, and sometimes they will screen you before you get in because they want to make sure you're not just going to waste their time marketing, that you're, you know, really invested in the community. But yeah, typically once you get in there, I mean, and like I said, I have just found the homeschool community to be very inviting. So, you know, once I would start asking questions, I would sometimes get inundated with information and opportunities and play groups, and you know, I'm probably busier now than I was you know, even when my kids were
right, yeah,
in school. Yeah, we're all over the place. So
yeah, I think once you get tapped into a homeschool type of network, whether that means you've got to pay like $20 a year to be tapped into these group activities, or whether someone's going to do it free. And if that doesn't exist, Marcus, someone can. So if you had 5 parents from 5 different families who are like, I'm going to start this homeschooling thing, they could just start collaborating. Hey, every Friday we're going to have a park day. We're going to meet at whatever the local park is, and we're going to let our kids play, and we're going to also study insects while we're at the park or something like that, or decapods, whatever. You know, you could just grab literally a book off your shelf, and it doesn't have to be that tight-laced. You know, you want to make learning fun. You don't need children sitting in chairs for 8 hours a day or 6 hours a day, whatever it is, lining up, asking permission to go to the bathroom. You don't have to wear a uniform. You know, you can do it for free. You can do it for $1,000. You can do it for $5,000. You know, it's really endless possibilities. So rip down those barriers. Make the magic happen. Magic.
Yeah.
There's no magic hands.
And it looks different in every community, and so there's
right.
And there are people like where I come from, and there are people who are interested in who might be excited and interested in about video recordings and doing sound. There might be interest in doing artistic expression through poetry and things like that. And there are people who can teach that. And there are people who can lead that. And so every community needs to look at their resources and look what's important to them, especially during this time during summer. And I think this is a good time for us to be able to continue to have this conversation, to be able to lead parents where they can do this, because this is new territory for us. This is new territory for everybody. But I do believe it's an exciting time. I believe that education. Yeah. I believe education now is finally going to be able to look at, which was the whole reason why I started running for office, which is to individualized education. And I never knew I was a school choice person. I just knew that I wanted every child to have an individualized education plan. That was my platform. And it is still based off of what I believe, that every child has an individual way that they learn. But we do have an immediate action right now. We have a lot of folks that are behind. They're going to be even more behind. And if you can help with that, you can inbox me, direct message on Facebook, and I can help you with resources to be able to get that done. Definitely, Rebecca has been doing this a lot longer than I in terms of the homeschooling. And so being able to communicate with her, and I can also on your behalf, which would be good if anybody has questions. But definitely, I do believe that we are at a challenging time, but we're at an exciting time, and I think that people need to remove all preconceived barriers that they had in their head and look at all of the incredible opportunities that we have going forward. And guess what? You are in control of that. And that's the beautiful thing.
Yeah. And one more important thing about funding is that if you have a child with learning differences or special needs student that already had an IEP in place, and I think you can substantiate that you have that on paper through the public school system, that money should be able to follow you to your homeschool. I do understand it is very difficult to get that executed. So that is another thing that I would like to see someone hit the fast forward button on in the General Assembly, because if there are these barriers holding parents back from exercising their educational freedoms in our state, North Carolina is a very free state. Don't feel like you need an expert, Marcus. So if you think you're going to lead in your community and try to teach something, just do whatever you're comfortable with. If it's community engagement, a lot of people ask me to do civics, and I'm like, no, we have somebody who already does that in Wake County. I ain't doing it. You know what I mean? I'm gonna do school choice. Yeah. I'm gonna do school choice.
Yeah. No, it can mean anything. That's the most beautiful thing. If you want to teach dance, and if you're a dancer and want to put up a YouTube video and want everybody to be able to look at you and look at that, that's fine. And like for me, doing the civic engagement, there are other people that might, like I said, poetry. There's lots of ways that this can get done. But there's also an Algebra 2 teacher. There's also a civics teacher. There's also a person that deals with world history, that knows that can get. There's also a remarkable facilitator that's been doing reading facilitator that's in the neighborhood, that's in the community, that can make sure that they can do things to make sure that people are reading on grade level next year. Or there is a volunteer that has the time and the space to coordinate it. So whatever your role is, we're going to need everybody to be able to sustain us through this difficult time, but it will be exciting.
Yeah, parents are going to see that there is a plethora of choices when it comes to books, teachers, subject experts, YouTube videos, articles. There really is a plethora. You just got to figure out what your preference is. So there is a woman named Carrie McDonald who focuses on unschooling. So that's just a spinoff from homeschooling. It's even more or less restricted. So let's see, like we were saying earlier, like it could be just interest focused education, and then you're building off of that. I don't know if you wanted to speak to that a little bit, Rebecca. We don't have to cut off at 1 hour exactly, but and people could always come back on later. So you want to talk about your son's coins?
Yeah, I've told a few friends this story, and again, I come from public school background, so I have my workbooks, and I have this curriculum that I expect we get through every year. And my son, he has really gotten into collecting coins, and he loves finding pennies, and he is studying about when where they were minted and what year, and all the different presidents and people on the coins, and so he's just obsessed with coins. And there was one day where I had him sitting down, and I was forcing him to finish his social studies curriculum because he had to finish every single page. You don't actually have to do every single page in the workbook, but in my mind he had to do every single page, but he was wanting to do his coins, and so he kept getting distracted from his social studies workbook into his his coin books and finding out their values, and again, who was on what coin and all that. And it just dawned on me, I was like, I'm forcing my son to sit here and do this social studies workbook when he's doing social studies, and he wants to, and he would sit and watch coin videos and look through these books all day long if I let him. And so I thought, gosh, I'm actually hindering his social studies learning because I'm forcing him to sit and do it in the way that I felt was correct. And so again, and I, like Marcus was saying, that math and science are those specific subjects and guidelines and things that we do need to have standards and requirements for students, and some standardization. But yet there's such an opportunity and motivation that comes from tapping in to kids and what their interests are, and there's so much learning that can happen from that. And so I want to let parents know, again, if your kids are able to do their schoolwork, quote unquote, in an hour and a half, it's okay for them to cook. My daughter's been baking, making food. Again, my son is obsessed with coins. We were actually doing a study about maple walnut trees, and we found out we can actually tap them for their sap and make syrup from it.
Oh,
so
nice.
We're going to be doing that later this week. So just again, just things that you think are not school, there's so much learning that comes just from those passions.
Yeah.
So that's okay. It's okay. So let your kids do their coin collecting, or whatever. Again, if they're interested in robotics or video, broadcasting, it's just, the list is just endless, and there's so much learning that occurs there, meaningful learning. So don't ever downplay that. Don't feel like that's a loss, because I feel like that's the bonus that we're getting in this time.
Yeah, and I would add that my daughter. So we heard from Carrie McDonald, the unschooling woman who I forget who she actually works for, but she's just very active. She's an author, active voice in this conversation, and I've heard her on Corey DeAngelis's live streaming. Have you heard of her, Marcus? Yeah, you have. Okay, so she's a great resource. And she mentioned Mo Willems the other day. And so after we got done listening to their live stream, I explored a little bit of Mo Willems. So it's an artist who invites you into a studio, kind of like this, in this virtual setting. And so now my daughter's basically learning how to do some stop motion film. So she's trying to build a set, basically a miniature set, because he had a video that was hands-on, and he showed the viewers it was just a shoebox or a pizza box, whatever it was, and he designed the front of it, and it looked like the images from his book. So that was so cool for anyone, K through 7th or 8th grade, to think about getting involved in that, whether you're just going to color out a book or you're going to build the set for, taking pictures for images in your book. So really the possibilities are endless. So you're going to have too many options. All right, well, let's wrap this up. I really appreciate you guys both participating. Sorry you had so many technical difficulties, Rebecca.
Oh, well, I'm glad I was, able to participate.
Yes, it was very informational. Thank you for coming, Rebecca. It meant a lot.
Yeah, and if anybody's still watching, or if you're watching this after the live broadcast has ended, you can feel free to post questions and comments. Marcus and Rebecca both are active on Facebook, I believe, and then Rebecca's not on Twitter, but that's okay. You can find me and Marcus on Twitter.
Stay off Twitter, Steph.
And then I would like to encourage people to go to northcarolinaschoolchoice.com and scroll to the bottom and add yourself to my subscribe list. I won't spam you, I promise. I'm not emailing people every single day, every week, or even every month. I'm just establishing a contact list so you can be tied into North Carolina School Choice in our state. So don't forget to share this post. That is the greatest compliment you can do, to just amplify our voices, amplify this discussion. You could click that share link and post it into private groups and things like that. So let's go ahead and sign off. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. You guys have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.